G'day legends and welcome to the Thursday Sesh by Celtic Down Under. I'm your host Jared and joining me tonight are Willie and Stephen. How are you, Willie?
I'm doing all right. Had a quiet week in the construction industry here, so it's nice to get a little bit of respite for once in a while. So, yeah, but doing okay on the whole.
How you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm all right, Jared. Just enjoying a bit of late winter, lovely weather here in Sydney. It's been 23, 24 degrees all this week here. It's not, you can't beat that for winter.
Happy days, mate. How was the Women's World Cup final? Did you end up going?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I was there with my daughter. Yeah, it was very good. Enjoyed it. It was good atmosphere, good crowd. Just pretty much the way the whole tournament's been. It was really good and really enjoyable, and even more enjoyable the fact that England didn't win it. Surrounded by English fans, so I was absolutely delighted that Spain took the biscuits. I had a Spain jersey actually. My son had bought for me years ago, and I'd never really wore it, so it was an excellent opportunity to wear it there. And I got a few comments. That's a funny accent for a Spaniard. But thankfully it was all in good fun.
Bear with me a second.
Try and fix my stereo. How's that, guys? Is that better?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, I had Mickey pointing in the comments there that my mic was muffled. So yeah, my microphone on the back of the USB camera was picking me up instead of this thing here. So thanks for the shout out and letting us know there, Mickey. Appreciate it. So yeah, we'll just get straight into the pod tonight. There's a bit to talk about. I think we've got about 5 or 6 main talking points, but the ones that I think the comments section will have a bit of a field day on, and we're going to have a bit of a dive into as well. So I'm going to start off with, as you said, name of the episode, jumping on the scales. It's pretty much our only other option at centre back alongside Lager Bielki for the weekend. So I'm going to start with this first question to you, Stephen. Do we have an injury crisis at Celtic? We currently have CCV, Naroski, Welsh, Hatade, Johnson, Tilio, O, and I'm sure there's a couple others I'm missing, while Kyogo's also playing with a shoulder injury. So do we have a injury crisis at Celtic?
Yeah, I'd say we definitely do. Only in defence, though. I wouldn't say it's too bad across the rest of the team, but certainly the injuries we have to our centre halves has been absolutely terrible, and it's left us down to the bare bones. And who knows what's going to happen on Saturday? Who knows what collection of a defence are going to turn out at Ibrox? And it's really worrying the state we're in at the moment. Saw a bit of news maybe that there's a possibility that Alistair Johnstone might be back, if not this weekend, maybe for the Rangers game. Do you want to throw him into that fixture after a long layoff? Not too sure about that. And then we need to we're waiting for word really what Cameron Carter-Vickers' injury status is. There's reports bouncing around, mostly rumours that he might be out till Christmas. And if that's the case, we're really in a bit of bother, and we'll probably have to do something in recruitment.
Yeah, we've got a comment here saying that Kennedy and Kuehl on at the weekend. Might have to if we're scraping the barrel that low. But yeah, Willie, I'd like your thoughts on the whole what Stephen just said, and if we got a an injury crisis going on.
Yeah, just sort of echo what Stephen says. It's the defensive area we seem to be struggling. We've got 7 registered centre backs on our books, and only 2 are fit. So if one of them goes down, we're in a whole world of trouble. Is it time to go out and sort of buy somebody else, or do we give Dane Murray a shot at the first team action and maybe recall Boss and Lawal from Fleetwood Town from his loan? Is that the sort of options you can go down? It all depends on sort of the length of time Narowski's out for, and CCV too. So if any of them are out for any sort of extended period in time, then perhaps it would be more prudent to go out and maybe make a move on that Xavier Mbayamba and see where that could lead to.
Yeah, I'm hoping we don't have to recall Lawal from his loan, because Yeah, he's been loaned out. We can bring him back, but then there's just a lot of mucking him around there. Andrew Galea has pretty much just summed up my thoughts there. Would be worst case scenario, you've got Ralston at centre back or Nawada can play at full back. So we've got some options there. Mickey Moynihan saying go 3 across the back, which is how I'd play Ralston as a right centre back if Johnston's back. But there's plenty of options there that we can do. But I'm going to, off the back of all of this, Stephen, do you think that the injury crisis is down to a change in training and game styles with the new manager coming in?
Nah, I'm not too sure about that. I know, Rodgers received a bit of criticism during his first spell at the club that he was overworking the players and he was flogging them basically, especially Kieran Tierney, who suffered greatly for being overplayed when he was carrying a back injury. But a lot of the injuries we've got just now are like carryovers from last year. Cameron Carter-Vickers, you could argue he was maybe brought back too quickly from his injury, but that can happen at any time you come back. Alistair Johnstone was injured from the closed season from an international game with Canada, I think. So it's only Narovsky really that's happened recently. I think that the rest of them were like hangovers. So I think so early into his time as manager, I don't think we can really blame the sort of training or the sports science because it's mostly just a continuation of what was going on last year.
Well, that was actually my next point there. I was going to say, Stephen, like we've had, with the new manager coming in and change of game styles, and then we've had staff turnover in the sports science department as well. Those are factors that could come into it. And the reason I brought those two up is because we had the same issue when Ange came in. He originally came in, we didn't have a lot of players, but then because of the demands that we had on people and how aggressive and the amount of running our guys had to do, then we had injury problems as well. Then until we got our sports science guy in, then it took a couple of months to settle down and get players back, and then we were good to go for the last 18 months or so of it. So yeah, I think it's more than likely, it looks like it's down to bad luck more than anything because there's a bunch of them been knocks and stuff like that. Andrew Galea, thank you for that's the one I couldn't remember. Kobayashi did his ankle in the preseason as well. I knew I was missing someone. So, Willie, what's your thoughts? Is it down to the manager and changing of game styles? Is it sports science? Is it bad luck? What's your thoughts overall on that?
I think it is just a case of bad luck. I mean, you talk about the training regimes and that, it's the same backroom staff, it's the same sports science team. So I can't see there being too much difference in the fitness regimes. It may be training drills and stuff like, but not so much in the fitness work. Yeah, it's really unlucky that it's happened, but maybe it's better to get it out of the way at the start of the season than have it happen in the middle of the season. But on the injury front, you also forgot to mention Albion Ayeti. He's out as well.
Who's that? I don't know who that is. Doesn't matter. So if it's down to we've had some injuries, we've had, changing of sports science, there's been some knocks, there's been whatever. I want to just touch on something you said before, Willie, which was, do you think Celtic needs to bring in another centre back? Now, you're saying that, do we look at Xavier Bayamba? I think I got it right eventually. Do we look at him? Do we, give Dane Murray a go if he's fit? The other option is the loan market that we haven't touched on now. I don't like going into the loan market and developing someone else's player unless there's an option to buy. But you would think in the next week of the transfer window, there's going to be some movement there on clubs, particularly down south, who have players who aren't in the manager's plans, who are going to become available, whether that's to be purchased outright or to go on loan for the season, that we could potentially be looking at. So do you guys think that that's an option we could look at? It's potentially just getting a centre back on loan, especially if you've got Welsh out for 4 months, Carter Vickers is out for about a month still. Narovsky, there's talk is it's about a month or two. And with Kobayashi, who knows when he'll be back. Do you really think that's something we should potentially be looking at as well? What do you reckon, Stephen?
Look, I wouldn't be against a loan signing. I think it would be informed a lot by how bad a couple of the injuries are. If Cameron Carter-Vickers is back in the middle of September, and Nawrocki's back around about the same time frame, that would really give us 3 first-choice centre-halves plus Welsh there, and Kobayashi and Scales in the background, unless we move them on. Potentially, though, I think we should be looking ahead, possibly to January or even next summer, when I think we'll come under pressure to sell Cameron Carter-Vickers. So it'd be excellent if we could have his replacements in now, so we can get them up to speed, give them some experience during the season, and ready to be in a good position to sell him next summer if a acceptable bids come in, which I'm sure they will if he has another season like last season. So I wouldn't be against a loan signing, but as long as it's the right player, no more Shane Duffys or any guys like that, that come up from the EPL with a big reputation as a no-nonsense centre back, and then proceed to dish up a whole load of nonsense for a whole season. So if it's the right player, then yes, for sure. But I would rather see them going out and buying a centre half, especially if it's Mbiyamba. That would be good, because they certainly seem to have scouted him, and he's certainly one that seems to fit the bill.
Yeah, he fits the bill, because Rodgers did say that he wanted some size in the team. He's 6'4". If you put him alongside, Lagerfeld at 6'2", 6'3", and Nawrocki the same, that puts a bit of size in your centre back rotation coming into next year when you got Carter-Vickers at 6 foot as well. So you've got plenty of height there. Then it's a matter of getting some more in the midfield there. But it's going to bring up here, Andrew Galea is saying, if we buy another centre back, we'd have to offload someone. More than likely, yeah, Kobayashi would go in January, because that's when the Japanese season would start. So that's who I think would be going out. So you get one in now to let him go once he's back and later on in the year. On top of that, Andrew's also saying there should be a list of players leaving the club over the rest of the window, which we can discuss in a little bit as well. But Willie, what's your thoughts? Do we bring in a loan player? And if we do, who do you think we should look to sign?
If you're going to take somebody on loan, it's difficult to say, because until the window's about to slam shut, you won't know who is going to be fully available. I mean, there was talks that Sergio Ramos is on the free market, and he would make a good signing. It would only be for 1 year, and then he'd probably end up hanging his boots up. I mean, that could do the trick just for 1 year. It would sell some shirts and that and make a little bit of money. But for me, I would rather take Lawson Lowell back from his loan, or promote Dane Murray, because as you say, it's only a month until CCV and Nawrocki's back, so it is a very short-term thing. But I do like what Stevie said there on Mbiyamba. Like, if we are looking to sell CCV come next season, then maybe it is the time to go out and spend a little bit of money, get him and embed him in. So I wouldn't be opposed to a loan deal, but as Stevie says, it has to be the right one.
That's Sergio Ramos talk from our group chat the other day, where I sent through the list of players and everything for us. Yeah, look, realistically, Ramos would be, if you could get him in, how good would that be to have him mentoring for a season in the same way we had, was it Colo Torre come in Rodgers' first season, overseeing and mentoring those blokes? Imagine if you could land someone of Ramos' stature, how many Champions Leagues he's won, trophies everywhere, bring someone like that into the club. Absolutely no chance in hell it's going to happen, or that we can afford it. But that'd be the dream. Plus, he's a hard bastard, so it'd be good to have someone there who doesn't mind sinking the boots in if need be. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, look, we can always dream. But somehow I don't think Glasgow is next on Sergio Ramos's bucket list. I think he's probably got his eyes on a slightly more glamorous destination than that. And speaking of Colo Touré, he did a job for us for a little bit of the season, and then came a cropper in a Champions League game, if I'm not mistaken. Was it against Mönchengladbach, I think? Just had an absolute nightmare and was never seen again. So probably not from that point of view, but yeah, Sergio Ramos, certainly one to dream about.
So I
wouldn't let him near the
trophies.
trophies, so I mean, not in an open class anyway.
No.
So I brought up the list that we were talking about. So all these players that said, well, on the transfer market free agent list. So we need a goalkeeper. David De Gea, anyone? No chance. But then you go through and it's like, okay, they've got a defensive midfielder here, Luis Chavez, Jesse Lingard. The fourth one listed here is Alfredo Morelos. And then you just scroll down the list and it's like, do we need a left winger? Do you think Eden Hazard would want to come up to Glasgow? Then you keep going down, and for a centre back, we're talking about it. 25-year-old Axel Tuanzebe is a free agent you could potentially sign. You keep scrolling down the list more. And there was a couple others names came up in our group chat as well that we're looking at. So one that jumped off the page to me was Nampalius Mendy, defensive midfielder. We've been linked with him in the past. So yeah, there's some players there that will plug a few holes, but everyone's talking about we need a left winger, we need a left back, we need a goalkeeper. So I brought this comment for you, Willie, from Pat Warren. Why do we want CCV away? He's never said he wasn't happy, gives everything. We are a selling club, but we have just tied some major players down. What's your thoughts on that, Willie?
I'd be happy for CCV to sign a deal for life. I think he's a great defender, but we all know that our best players are always up for grabs when the money's right. And I have a funny feeling that he's going to be one of the next ones that's sold, much as I would hate for it to happen.
And Stephen, what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, 2 years is about the normal shelf life these days for us to hang on to players. So I could, I agree with the guy in the comments. I would love to, and I agree with Willie, I would love to see him there long term, 5, 6, 7 years, but it's just not going to happen. We all know that if an offer that comes in that's acceptable to the club, it'll be off, and that's just the way it is for us. And to be honest with you, that's the way it should be, because we bring these guys in, selling them the vision that we can be a stepping stone to something else. I mean, Cameron Carter-Vickers probably never dreamed about spending his career at Celtic, but he'll be here to try and get himself a move back into the EPL, which is ultimately where they all want to be. So if we can profit out of that and get the correct fee for him, and you'd be looking for top money for Cameron Carter-Vickers, because he's a good age. And he's at top of his game. He's a current international, so you wouldn't be selling him on the cheap. And if we get an acceptable offer for him, the simple fact of life is that they'll be gone.
Yep, 100%. Have to agree with you. Like, I think he's a good quality player. He's doing well for us. Hopefully, he wants to stay long term, because he did have a lot of chopping and changing. I think it was 10 clubs or something before he came to us. So he seems to have settled and found a home here. So I think it'd take a decent move to a decent club to get him out the door. But yeah, if Carter-Vickers wants to, as Willie said, if Carter-Vickers wants to stay for for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever, I'd be cool with that. So we're going to go on to our next topic here. So transfers. We're going to talk about a couple of the rumors that are floating around. I'm going to bring up a bunch of your comments here that I've just flagged. So we've got a bit to talk about, but the current rumors, everyone's saying the whole Jota thing. Oh, we've been paid the money. We should bring him home, back up the road to Glasgow because he's a free agent again. How funny would it be to sign Jota's replacement and he's Jota? Like, to me, that's a pretty funny dynamic that could happen. But at the same time, I highly doubt he will come back because he left for a life-changing money and everything. I'm a bit unsure of what the relationship between him and Rodgers was like because of that. So I don't know. What's your thoughts, Stephen? Would you bring Jota back if he wanted to come back up the road to Glasgow?
Well, yeah, I mean, if he wanted to come back and he was available on a free, then absolutely, just stick the 25 million in the bank and still get to keep the player. But in reality, it's not going to happen, because I think probably you'll find that even if he hadn't gone to Saudi, he'd probably been looking for a move, if not this year, certainly next. So him and his agent will be plotting his next move already, and it won't be coming back to the Scottish League. He'll have especially if he's available on a free, there'll be a queue of people, queue of clubs at a really high level looking at Jota, and I wouldn't be surprised if quite one of the top 5 leagues a team comes in from. I know Benfica were pretty annoyed that they'd let him go. They sort of saw that as a major blunder, so they might be interested in taking him back on a free. Potentially, some of the Spanish teams will look at him, the French, and maybe even the bottom half of the EPL. But he'll certainly have options open to him. But it's just so bizarre what's happened over there, isn't it? It's hard to get your head around. He's gone over there, 25 million transfer fee, and a salary, if you believe the rumours, of about 170 grand a week. And they've just basically, he's been there a couple of months, and they're just going to say, okay, we'll pay up your contract and away you go. I mean, how bizarre is that? And what's happening to football these days if that actually can happen?
Yeah, strange. Like the doctor's written, Jota's the exception. I'd bring the lad home if the rumours are true. That would be cool. Willie, what's your thoughts?
I'd have him back in a heartbeat. Like he's a tremendous player. He just absolutely loved playing against Rangers. Right? If we could get him in before that game, it would be absolutely phenomenal. But we'll never be able to afford his wages. The wages he'll command now will be well out with our pay grade. I think he'll be headed to the SPL, the EPL, or off to La Liga in Spain, if I'm honest. But as what Stevie's saying, I think there's a rule in Saudi that they're only allowed 8 European players, and they want to bring in Mo Salah, so they have to let one go to make way, allow Mo Salah to come in, and Jota's the one that decided that they're going to let go, which is a shame because, well, is it a shame? I mean, he's going to get his contract paid out. It's not really that big a shame for him, is it? He's laughing all the way to the bank. Like, he'll get his pick of whatever club he wants to go to, so it's a win-win for him at the moment, right? I bet, like I say, I would take him back in a heartbeat. Like,
there's a song, "Money for Nothing." I think that's pretty much what he's just got there. So, got some comments here. RL77, the Brazen Head is calling. Andrew Galea, where will Jota go? I don't think EPL clubs would rate him. The Pork Chop Express, anyone would have done the same with the cash that was offered to him. Pretty sure that I'd have taken the chance if it was offered, 100%. James Floyd is saying Atalanta is the team in Italy that he's been linked with. On top of that, where we're rattling through all the top 5 leagues and there was no mention of Germany. I know from friends of mine who are massive Werder Bremen fans. So they're like, what's he like? That's the rumours. His name's bouncing around in there as well in the Bundesliga. So that's a club that's looking at him that I'm aware of. RL77, let's face it, Jota can come back and buy Celtic. Yep, get it done. If you really want to get rid of Dermot. Yeah, I'm not going to bring up that. I think Pete McJ, I think Jota will end up back in Portugal. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up at the end of the day. He's just made an absolute bucket load of cash, and any one of us, if you got 7 times your wage, it makes sense to go and take that role and see what happens. So the other one that's been linked back to us, and not Paul Birrell bring home KT. The talk is we're now the bookie's favourite for Tierney to come back. I'm waiting for the comment section to go absolutely off its chops now. So this isn't me saying it. If he came back, great, but it's not I don't know. See how that goes. But yeah, what's your thoughts, Willie?
yeah, off the 2 you would like to bring home, he's probably the one that's most likely to happen. I've said before, I don't think it would happen due to the phenomenal wages he's on as well. I think he's on about 120k a week, which might cause some ructions with the rest of the team if he's going to start earning double what everyone else is on. But right now, I would welcome him back with open arms. Greg Taylor's form is starting to freak me out somewhat, and the fact that Burnaby doesn't seem even getting a sniff of it. Granted, how poor Greg Taylor's playing, it just seems to me that the left back position's an awful mess. So yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed ASAP, and Kieran Tierney would fit that bill. If it's not him, then that Merlin boy down in Nantes in France is another one, but that all seems to be paper talk as well. So, but like I say, left back is definitely a position that they need to address soon.
Stephen, over to you, mate.
Yeah, well, I mean, just much like Willie said, you would love to have Kieran Tierney back, and you would love to have him back in a permanent deal, if it was possible. But it's unlikely to be possible unless something really wild happens and Arsenal decide to half their fee expectations, which isn't going to happen. But my concern is, again, it's a bit late in the day now. We've got a week to go in the window. I'll probably talk a little bit more about this in a while, but we don't have too many options left, and we're running out of time to get a left back in, and we have to get one. So if we have to throw a whole load of money at a 12-month loan for Kieran Tierney, then that might just be what we need to do. Anybody who says he's not, it's not a good footballing move for him to bring him back is kidding themselves on. He'll instantly walk into our team and be the best player there. He's an international class left back. And he would transform our team if you brought him in there, and he makes such a huge difference. So I hope it happens. And I get what everybody's saying, that it's unlikely due to money and all that, but I don't know. There's just something. There's something a feeling about this that it seems to be gathering pace, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get this across the line. There's a lot of hurdles to get over first, but let's hope they can, because it would be a real plus and a real shot in the arm for the club.
Plus, it'd help in Europe with the homegrown quota as well that we always bring up. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you. I don't really like going back with former players and that. Mickey Moynihan's got a comment here. Is KT injury free at the moment? Apparently he is. He's done a full preseason. The thing with Arsenal is they just signed a guy to come in and challenge Zinchenko at left back, and he did his ACL on the weekend, so who knows what Arsenal's doing as well. I'm going to bring up a couple of comments here. So we've got your Pork Chop Express. KT would keep the physio busy at Celtic Park. No thanks. And then Andrew Galea was, so Rodgers can wreck him again if we were to bring him back. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, we'll see how that all plays out in the next little while. What do we got here? Got some more comments. So Pegleg Lonergan, if Tierney's willing, get him in the door. We're heading into the Champions League. Who's news? Tierney's on a 7-year deal worth $43 million in wages. So there's plenty of options there. On top of this, you've got other things we've been linked with. There's a Honduras winger, Luis Palma from Aris Thessalonica in Greece is where he's playing. It's been linked with us by Red Top Papers, the bloggers, pretty much everyone and anyone. Now, there was a comment I'm just going to bring up, which is Pegleg was saying another project signing on the cards with this Honduran lad. I don't really think it's a project signing. When you look at it, it's £3.5 million for him. It's 23, scored 16 goals from last season. He seems a lot more left-sided winger. I know the mob over at Ibrox were linked with him as well. So it's going to be I think he'd be, if you don't bring Jota back to play that left wing, you're bringing him in. That's pretty much the final line through Maeda's name as a left winger. And then he becomes our striker. We've been linked with that Vistgarden striker from Brøndby for £4 million. So I reckon we'll probably get one of those two. I doubt we'd get both of them. We don't need 750 wingers at the club. So I think if Palmer comes in, then Maeda officially becomes a striker in the rotation. If he doesn't come in, then you probably bring in the lad from Brøndby. But what's your thoughts on that one, Willie?
Yeah, Stephen McGowan seems to be over this one, so he usually has a good bit of insight. Well, he seems to be one of the journalists at ITK with Celtic. From what I've seen in the video reels, he seems a decent enough player. I've read a little bit about him. He can play. He can operate anywhere across the front three. He can play as a second striker. He seems to have a good range of well-angled crosses and switching ability. He'll drop deep to come in between the lines to try and pick up the ball and carry it forward. So it's one of that sort of moves similar to the one with Daniel Podence last week. Similar sort of attributes as him. So it is that is sort of the style of player they seem to be looking for at the moment. So it would make sense to me to bring him in. But as you say, The Kisgarten one as well is another one that could be in the offing. So it'd be interesting to see which way it goes, because there are rumours on the socials too that the Daniel Podence deal isn't dead and buried just yet.
Well, there's comments here as well. So from Paul is saying, is Marco Tilio the answer at left wing? I hope so. That's where I think he plays his best, as a left winger, inverting onto his right foot. So to me, that's an option. But then Andrew Goulet asked earlier, was Tilio's injury? It's taken forever. Now, he had a calf injury when he was at Melbourne City last year that he played through with and carried the second half of the season that he's trying to get over. So apparently the talk is he's due back about middle of September. So I don't know how we'd tackle that. But yeah, look at it and go, as Willie was saying, Palmer can also play in the 10. And if he comes in, if we bring in anyone at that position, then Haksabanovic has got to be out the door. Just in terms of sheer numbers, I think that's the number one adjustment for me. But what do we got here? Whose news is the guy from Bromby played left side of a 3 and wasn't a standout big guy striker, not a winger, which is what we're after. Do we need a striker in the Giakoumakis mould who can give us something different, or do we need another winger? Let us know in the comments.
Just a quick wee fact on Palmer. When I was looking around, he was managed by Alan Pardew last season, so I didn't know that. One of those names that disappears off the face of the earth and then reappears out of nothing. So.
And Steve, what's your thoughts on the whole situation? Would you rather bring in Palmer, or would you rather a striker? What do you reckon?
Well, I was having a look at I think almost every Celtic fan was having a look at the Palmer highlights today, having a look at some of his stats, and he looks a decent player, but I don't know though. I think I'm pretty underwhelmed that that's the type of player we're going for as a replacement for, as a replacement for Jota. Or to sort of fulfill a kind of role in the team that Jota did. I was hoping they would be looking for someone a little bit better than that. Now, he might turn out to be a great player, but I don't think this sort of recruitment is going to move the needle for us, especially in a European context. He's another player who'll probably come in, he'll do all right, and we might move him on in a couple of years for maybe, if he does well, for 10 to 12 million or something. But this isn't the type of signing that's going to make a difference for us. So I would like to see them signing another wide player, and I don't think we've replaced Jota yet. I would like to see him signing someone with the same sort of profile that Jota had when he came here at first. A product of one of the most highly rated academies in Europe. Someone who's just not been able to break into their first team, and someone we can maybe get on a loan with an option to buy. I mean, we've explored that market before with the likes of Odsonne Edouard and with Jota, and it's been very successful for us, and I don't know why we don't do that again. So, I'm not really enthused by this signing, but, he does seem to be a decent player. Looks as if he could take a decent free kick. But on the striker question, I don't think we can have Maeda as our striker backup. I think Maeda can play striker in a very select type of game, and that's the type of game where we don't have the majority of possession. His main strength is pressing. He's an elite level presser. He's got high energy levels and he can run all day, but he can't play with his back to goal. He doesn't have an instinctive finish on him, and he's not got a great first touch. So in an SPFL context, he can't play as a striker for us, and for that reason, I wouldn't have him as a backup striker. Now, what you do with him, I'm not too sure, but that's a question for a manager to sort out. I was reading a little bit today about Georgios Giakoumakis, who you mentioned there, and we really are missing him, in my opinion. I don't think we should have let him go. I mean, I know it's all right to be wise after the fact, but we've never really replaced what he brought to the team, and that is a striker that can come in and play in place of Kyogo and compete with Kyogo for the first team, for the centre forward position. And I was reading that there's a few teams in Europe sniffing about him now to try and bring him back from the MLS. He's done really well over there, and I think he's a better striker than what a lot of people gave him credit for when we were here. So, I think we need to sign another striker. And whether it's the boy from Brøndby or not, I'm not too. His stats don't seem to be particularly impressive, but I don't know. I haven't seen him playing, so I can't really make a call on that. But certainly, I think we need both. I think we need a striker and a left winger.
Speaking of Giakoumakis, 12 goals in 12 games. That's why he's getting linked with clubs. So he's doing well over there at Atlanta. But yeah, just something that we're talking about there as well, like with the whole recruitment and that. We'll get into that a little bit, one of our next topics. But I'm looking at it going, I agree with what you're saying, Stephen, in terms of we've got to get some players who are first team ready. But then where you're saying, I just lost my thought there a little bit. But no, it was I was going to say along the lines of Maeda at striker. That's what it was. He's got the touch of a baby elephant in certain situations. And I think, and I was chatting to Jerry, who's on Axom, and we're having a bit of a chat about this afternoon. And for me, and what we both agree on is if you play him on the wing, where he's got to get the ball, gather it, beat a man, he tends to be, that first touch of his is a killer. If you play him as a striker, like in the first preseason game where he scored the hat-trick in a half, if you get him just playing where he's, getting the ball out wide and is running onto it and it doesn't have to think first touch, hit it, header, shoot it, like that, and simplify his game, it's a lot easier for him, I think, than actually put him on the wing where he has to beat a man. The other thing with him is playing in Europe, where you said before, Stephen, it's a game where we don't have a lot of possession. He'd be perfect. He'd be the Jamie Vardy for Rodgers' system, like Vardy was for him at Leicester, in that get him playing on that guy's shoulder, the ball gets to one of our 700 wingers, and then we can cut it back into him from first touch to have a shot. That's how he scored those goals. He scored that first half hat-trick in the preseason. So that's the way he needs to play if he's going to be a striker. I just don't think he's a winger in this current system. We're not pressing the way Ange used to, which would make up for it, and you had to have him in there just for the press. So it's one of those sort of things where it's a bit of a hard one to figure out exactly how he fits. I don't think he's got poor technique. I think it's just in certain situations, his first touch is pretty bad. Anything to add to that, Willie or Stephen? Or should we crack on to the next one?
Well, I think when you think about Maeda's finishing, I always think about Real Madrid at home, when he fluffed that chance from about 3 meters out, and that's I've got PTSD from that. That could have been a sliding doors moment for our season. We score that, we go a goal up. It might have been an entirely different game, but I get what you're saying, Jared. I get the comparisons with Jamie Vardy, but Jamie Vardy was an elite level finisher, probably one of the best that the English game's produced in a long time, and that's not Maeda. And I think if we play him, he can play in certain games as a striker, as I mentioned, games when we give up possession, but not if you're going to come up against a packed defence like this weekend, for instance, against St Johnstone, you either got to have to play it like Kyogo does, like your movement's so good, you're finding little pockets of space and you're instinctively finishing, or you play like Giakoumakis, play with your back to goal, use your ass to make space and just turn and get shots away. And to me, he's doing neither of those things. So it's a no from me. And I hope that we're looking to bring in another striker.
Just to address a couple of the comments, Strangelove put in there, wasn't made at the top of the goal scoring charts in the J League when we signed him. Yeah, he was. But the way he plays for the Japan national team and the way he played at Yokohama, they both play counter-attacking football, which suits his game as a striker a lot better. Where as Stephen was saying, where we are ball dominant, it's not the same thing. When you're going to have a bunch of 2 lines of defenders in front of him, it's going to be a lot harder for him. So if he was playing in a counter-attacking team, or if we're in Europe and we're counter-attacking, you'd hope he'd do better than he did against Real Madrid in that one where he just absolutely shanked it. But yeah, that's where he gets a lot of his goals, whether it's for the Japan national team or when he was playing at Yokohama, was more in a counter-attacking system. Got anything to add, Willie?
Nah, I think it's all pretty much covered. I think with Rodgers' style of football, it may not suit him out on the wing either, because under Ange, he liked to press people high, push them into their own half, and sort of pin them in there. Whereas Rodgers is more patient and likes to draw teams out and try and expose spaces that way and get midfield runners in beyond. So I don't know. It's a different time for Maeda than it was this time last year. We're all excited about where he was going to go and how he was going to be. And right now, it's just kind of a little bit questionable. Is it going to work for him under the Rodgers system? So hopefully it will, because I do think he's a talented player. But as you say, his first touch leaves a lot to be desired, and it's not really the kind of football for him to be playing up front as a main striker either. So it's just difficult to see where it's going to go for him.
I'm going to bring up a comment from Andrew Galea. I prefer wingers who can dribble, so Young and Tilio fit the bill. So I think that suits Rodgers' system a lot more as well, where, you want to beat a team, draw them out and, get past them. So I think that'll work there. But of what you were saying, Willie, the thought popped into my head. It's going to be a matter of who's going to last longer. Who's going to outlast the other? Is it going to be Maeda at Celtic or Rodgers at Celtic? Because, there's already rumblings of people wanting Rodgers gone. People like me who weren't big on him coming back, but now he's here, supporting that he's here and he's probably the best candidate we could have got. But at the same time, there's, the players and the recruitment, which is that this is going to tie into our next topic. It was more structured towards a certain play style. And now we're having a massive transition from a pressing game where if you lose the ball, doesn't matter, win it back within 5 seconds, to now, okay, get the ball, be patient. It's a game of chess, move the pieces around the board and get it done. So it's a bit of a weird one, trying to figure out how it all works a bit like that. But last thing on transfers I wanted to do before we turn to the recruitment talk was the old in the know people in our support. There's been quite a few of them saying that we are down the road with signing a left winger and a left wing and a left back. There's been a lot of talk about that the last couple of days on the old Twitter, or AKA X. So, there's been a bit of that going on. You don't know what to believe. It's just people sometimes spouting copious amounts of. It's the old anyone who's listening in or watching, who's based in Australia and knows the rugby league. Stephen, you'll get this one straight away. Phil Gould runs the Canterbury Bulldogs. He's Channel 9 commentator. Says a lot of absolute rubbish, like statements. Statement. This player's not any good in this situation. This player's no good here. And then he'll throw 20 things out there. One thing will come off 3 weeks later and be like, see, I was right when I said this, blah, blah, blah. That's what these people are like on Twitter, in my opinion. So I'm sure everyone in every other sport knows someone like that as well. But I hope we get a left back in. I hope we get this Contan Merlin in. I'd rather him than KT because it's a long-term thing. And the left winger could potentially be Palmer. So we'll see what happens there. But we're going to talk about the main elephant in the room. We're talking about recruitment. And we're seeing all sorts of people talking about it, whether it's in Facebook groups, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in WhatsApp groups, whatever. Recruitment is a massive thing, especially when there's a week left in the transfer window. So I want to ask you, I'll go to you, Stephen. Do you think there has been a change to the way Celtic are doing things recruitment-wise under Brendan compared with how they were done under Ange?
No, I don't really think there has been a change. I think we're following pretty much the same model as we did under Ange, and that is basically buying cheap players with the view to maximising the revenue we get when we sell them on. Now, Ange was great for Celtic and filled us with success, and we all went on in a tidal wave. But to be honest with you, again, and I keep getting back to this, we've never improved in Europe. And a decade in recent years, the last 2 decades in Europe, it's been an embarrassment for the club, and we need to do something about that. And we're not going to do something about that the way we've handled this transfer window again. When Rodgers came back, everybody's hopes were high that the fact that he was being tempted back to the club signalled that we were going to do things a bit differently. We were going to try and spend a little bit more money on individual players with a view to recruiting better players and potentially moving them on in 2 years' time for more money rather than having this £25 million glass ceiling that we seem to have at the moment. And I think this transfer window has been very instructive for us about where the board see our place in Europe. And that is, they don't see it as being important. They see us qualifying for the Champions League as being a bonus, and domestic dominance is really all that matters for them. Because the way we've handled this, the way the window's gone so far, we're not any better than we were last season. Arguably, we're in a worse position, and we weren't good enough in Europe last year. So I can't really see anything else except another poor showing in Europe this year. And that's going to be enormously hurtful for the club in terms of the next few years' coefficients and whether we get our automatic Champions League qualification place or whether we're seeded in the qualifiers and all that, because we're heading in the wrong direction in Europe. Other teams are passing us and putting distance between them and us. And to be honest with you, this isn't the way to address it.
And what are your thoughts, Willie?
No, I'm with Stephen on that. We touched on it. We did a deep dive into the European and comparing ourselves to our peers. And the conclusion was that the board are happy just for us to be one step ahead of Rangers. And it doesn't seem to have moved on from, the needle hasn't nudged from that position in any way, shape or form. Some of the signings we've made, they're as Stephen says, they're in the lower end of the price market. We can afford a lot more. We can afford to push the boat out a bit more too if we want the better players, but we don't seem to be doing that. And the only thing we seem to look at is the sell-on value. I can understand slightly that there may be a shift in the way we look to sign players, because Brendan might come in and say, well, look, I don't really fancy a lot of these Asian players. Can we start looking to a more European style? But the way things have dragged on and become so prolonged in this transfer market, we've gone from being like under Ange, we were quite proactive in signing players. We were signing players in January with a view to bedding them in for 6 months and having them ready for the next season, to right now where it's going to be reactive. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I said I wasn't panicking. I had my hand sort of hovering over the panic button. And then in came Lagerbielke, and I thought, all right, okay. And I relaxed a little bit, thinking this is going to be the start of the signings coming in. But my fingers are thrumming away big time behind the panic button because I don't see any improvement. And with the sale of Carl Starfelt, I think we kind of maybe weakened our defence. And without replacing Jota, I kind of think I think we're sidestepping from one position to the next into the new season. Okay, Lagerbielke and Nerowski's come in and they will probably go on to be decent defenders. But from this moment in time, I don't think we've improved any. I don't think we've gone backward too far or regressed too far. But the rest of European football, they don't sit still. They're always moving forward and we're not. And last season, Rangers went out into Europe and had a really, really embarrassing time. And if the draw goes against us this year, I mean, you look at some of the pots and some of the seedings, you could easily get drawn in a group with Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund and AC Milan from pot 1, 2 and 3, and that could be seriously embarrassing for Celtic going forward. And the board, just as I said at the start, are just more content with being one step ahead of Rangers than they are in moving the club forward into where we want to, the fans want it to be.
Yeah, I agree with both of what you were saying, and I'm just going through some comments here. So bring this one up, Martin. We have 3/4 of our back four out plus the backup. So now the backup. So now backups for them. We need to remember that CCV and Jota wasn't done until last week, and only 3 of Ange's early window signings have come good. So there's that. There's a whole bunch of other comments here that I'll get into. So we've got Pete McGee was, if we keep signing midfielders and wingers when we know that the backup goalkeeper and 2 fullbacks what we need. Michael McDonald, Celtic will sign 6 players, but fans in Scotland think they are all project players, even though they played first-team football. Pegleg Lonergan, first-team football for who? Never even heard of the club that Honduran has played for. People haven't even heard of the club that Kyogo had played for before we signed him. So I'm not buying the whole I've never heard of who he's played for. Andrew Gallagher, I'm not really thinking about Europe. I'm more concerned we win the league. That's pretty much what the board think as well. Alan Woods said before, I think Brendan has been fed a pack of lies about budgets and transfer control and feels he can't quit again. If he was going to quit again, I'd actually be like, I actually reckon he was in a hiding to nothing when he came in. But if he was to just walk out now and be like, they're not giving me the players I want, they're not living up to their promises and left, that's going to just absolutely, it'll tarnish any remaining legacy that he would ever have had at Celtic. But at the same time, it's going to set a massive bonfire happening at the board's feet. And then we'll probably have people at the front of the stadium, throwing barricades around and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a bit of a interesting one. Pegleg was, well said, Stephen. Europe's where it's at, and we have been utter embarrassment. Pete McGee's like, and told the board what Asian players he knew and wanted, and we got them. Don't see any sign of that at the moment. And then we got Strangelove. The results in Europe under Ant didn't reflect the performances, but I was proud to see Celtic go toe-to-toe. It was brave and created value in our squad. Looks like there's an elephant in the boardroom. Thought Brendan Rodgers would demand more control of who we signed. Well, he's openly said in the media this week that it's not about, he's basically told these are the players you've got, coach them. And he's come in and everyone was saying he's a good coach and good for development. I've said that myself. So I think putting all that aside, the main things for me is the recruitment it seems really disjointed. And where it's disjointed is, as a fan base, we're looking for players and we think we should be getting players at certain positions. But then the club's getting us players and signing players at other positions. So that's the disjointed part of it. And then on top of that, we have an injury crisis going on, which is weakening things and making us all, nervy, have no fingernails left from watching the game on the weekend, that sort of stuff, right? So I think you put the two of them together and it's an absolute, the nicest way to say it is, it's a bit of a shit show. So we got Pete McGee was saying we're panicking because of injuries. We need to bolster the back five. Andrew Gallagher had a comment, it's hard to sell players that haven't played in months. I'm going to bring up this one from Michael Ross. Serginho Dest would have been a great signing, the PSV fullback. They got him on loan from Barca. Yeah, they got him on loan for, I think it was 3-4 million or something this season. And then it was an obligation to buy him for 8 or 9 million at the end of the season. So it would have worked out as a club record for us at 12 million. But he would have been the right sort of player. So, yeah, it's a bit of a doozy the way the whole recruitment's done. So to me, also, it looks like we're still scouting the same markets like Japan, Korea, Scandinavia, England, the places we don't look, France, that sort of stuff, which is normal. So the next question is, Willie, do you think that the club, because we're talking about bringing in project players, a lot of people are talking about that, do you think the club is looking to recruit quantity or quality and develop them to sell in the future, or are we bringing in quality that's first team ready to immediately contribute in the team? What do you think's happening?
Well, on evidence of the signing so far this summer, it's the former. It's going for quantity over quality. I mean, anyone anyone who knows anything about football can see that we need a goalkeeper desperately, and a first-team goalkeeper at that, not just somebody who's going to bolster numbers. And it doesn't even look like we're even going to be entertaining any thoughts of buying anyone in that position. So, do you look at players like Fabian Ryder, who are classy players? These are players that we could afford. If we might be a little high on the price range, but we could afford to buy him. If we could match his wages, he's a sort of player that would come in and fit the player trading model that we can move him on again for more money. But we don't seem to be concerned about that. Anything that's over and above 5 million, the board just seems to be shaking their head. No, so it's a little concerning the way the transfer policy is working out at the moment. And as with 7 days to go, we're in desperate need of 4 positions to be filled before that door closes. But there's no sign of that 4 players coming in.
It's going to be an interesting podcast next Thursday for the transfer deadline day one for us. We'll see who's panty wetting and who's like losing it. I think we'll have to wear yellow for that podcast if my memory's right. That's how it works, isn't it? So very interesting. But what's your thoughts, Stephen? You said it earlier about we've spoken about the whole production line as we talk about. So you have the first team guy in, you have them, you play, you sell them like Jota, you have a Barter on the bench ready to come in and start. You sell him for a couple of million in a few years. You sign his replacement in Yang to develop him for a few years to take it. And that's how it constantly churns. We've spoken about that on previous podcasts. Do you think that's what we're still trying to do? Or do you think we're actually are going to bring in a couple of first team players?
Well, I'm running out of positivity that we're going to get the deals we need done over the next week. I can't see it. I agree with what you said earlier. That the whole thing seemed a little bit confused. We seem to be signing players just because they're at the right value, at the right age, and fit this so-called transfer model that we've got. But the transfer model should serve the club. Not the other way around. We're not a club. We're not here to generate money. We're here to achieve football success. And the model should always feed that. Now, I don't have a problem when I'm signing players in the 2-3 million bracket and then trying to flip them down the road for 10 to 15. But that has to be augmented by something else. And any time we have spent bigger money, it's generally been a success. Spent £9 million on Odsonne Edouard 4 years ago. Sold him a couple of years later for 20. Arguably sold him a year too late. Probably I got more than that again if we'd sold him the year previously. Jota, we brought in £6.5 million, sold him for 25. So anytime we have dipped our toe into that market, we have made a success of it. But for some reason as well, I think we know the reason. The board just don't want to go down that road. And they seem to be filling the squad with cheap signings, and it is quantity over quality, and that's why we're left with a bloated squad. Because when you sign a player at £2 million, and none of this is an exact science, but in general terms, there's a higher risk that he's not going to work if you sign a cheap player. Now, I know there's always exceptions to that rule, but at the moment, our squad is stuffed full of guys who are just not contributing, who we've brought in for cheap money, and we can't get rid of them now. And we're left to pay out contracts and get them off the books. But what we should be doing is focusing on real quality and using our scouting department, which we talk about all the time about how good it is, using that to get the correct players. Guys like Odsonne Edouard and guys like Jota, these are examples of where we got it right. And that's what I would like to do. And what Willie says is absolutely right. Fabian Ryder, that sort of level of signing should not be above us. I mean, £9 million for Edward 4 years ago is probably worth about 12-13 million now. We should be able to buy players in that price range if we've done our scouting properly and if we think they fit the bill. But we're still messing around here, 2-3 million, and we're never going to move the dial in Europe unless we change the way we approach this.
100%. It's going to time at the end of the day, but we'll crack on to the last couple of topics to start winding the plot up. So, Ray Hatate rejects a new contract offer from Celtic. It was rumoured to have been 5 years, 50k a week. So that shows that our wage budget has moved up with the few signings and extensions and everything. We're talking a couple of weeks back. Say if you were to sell, before he got injured, you sell Hatate for 25-30 million. You spend the 16 million on Ryder. You've got your replacement in, and then you've got your 10 million there to go buy a couple of these little understudies to be Ryder's replacement. So Ryder stays in that role for a couple of years. We sell him for big money again, and then the guys we're signing under step through. That's the production line that we constantly are talking about. That's an ideal world. But I think Hatate has had his head turned. If he wasn't injured, would be looking at something here, but it's disappointing that he doesn't want to stay, but, there's got to be some sort of relationship there with the manager. And when you were like one of the first players picked every week under Ange and everything, and Rodgers drops you for Turnbull, it says a lot, basically. So you got anything you want to add on that one, Willie?
No, 50k a week I don't see him being offered any more deals, any more money than that. I think that's it. That'll be the negotiations done and dusted. So it'll be a case of when and how we move him on.
Stephen.
Well, I agree with Willie, but we just can't move him on at the moment. We don't have enough options in the middle of the park. And we need to hang on to whether or not he wants to stay or not.
Yep. I'd have to agree with you. We can't let him go anyway. He's got a couple of years left on his contract. What's that? 3 more years left. So worst case scenario, you don't like the offer, you want to delay it till the end of the season, whatever, that's fine, but you're under contract, so you're going to, while you're here, you're going to put in work. And as I said about Maeda early on as well, it could be one of them ones where it's just like, who's going to be back into the squad? Is it Hatade and Maeda back in? Who's going to be around longer? Or is it going to be Rogers who's going to be around longer? But anyway, we'll move on to Celtic versus St Johnstone on Sunday in the league. So head-to-head in their last 20 league games against them, 18 wins to Celtic and 2 draws. So it's always a bit of a tough game against them, but I'm thinking we've got to see that bounce-back factor, especially with Ibrox on the go in a couple of weeks and Europe draw next week and that sort of stuff. We've got to see a bit of a, what do we call it? A push forward in the way we're playing and getting up to speed. So for me, I'm going to go with a 3-1 win for us. And I'm going to start with Harding goals. I want to see Bernabé at left back. Don't really have many options at centre back. So it's Scales and Lagerbielke. And then the Bricky right, Ralston. Midfield, I want to see Kalmak, Owada and O'Reilly. Up front, Kyogo, Yang, and Abada. What's your score prediction, Stephen, and what starting lineup do you want?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same as yourself. It's a case of who's available at the back. If there's an outside chance of seeing Alistair Johnstone back at right back, then I would hope to see him there. But I agree with you, it's got to be Scales and Lagerbielke. I wouldn't be. I mean, do you throw in Bernabé for Taylor because Taylor's been so poor? There's a possibility there. But in midfield, yeah, Iwata. I'd be surprised if Iwata come in from the cold like that because he hasn't even got on the bench. He hasn't even got off the bench in any of the games so far. So I think he'll go. I think Turnbull will start again. I think it'll be Turnbull, O'Reilly, and Kalmak. I'd like to see Yang starting the right because he has looked good when he's come on, and I was hoping to see him from the start against Kilmarnock. And I think I would stick with Maeda on the left for just now and Kyogo through the middle. I think we'll win, but I think it will be another slog. So I think it'll be 2-1 Celtic.
Reason I said, Stephen, about bringing in Owada is because Kalmak seems to be drowning a little bit playing as a 6 in this current setup. Mm-hmm. So last time when Rogers was around, he had Bruni playing in the 6 and he was playing as an 8 and he was a lot more settled. Something if we bring in, whether it's Quan or we bring in Owada, bring in someone to play as a 6 and free Kalmak up, try and see if we can get on top of things in the middle of the park. But Willie, over to you for your score predictions and starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we'll go for a statement win here on Saturday. I think we really need a decent performance just to try and blow this negativity away. We really, really need to see something a bit more fluid from the middle of the park this week, because last week they were pretty much non-existent. And I also think that the team that we put out on Saturday should be somewhat reflective of the team that will be playing at Ibrox, because they need to get that sort of understanding of each other together. So for me, I would go with Hart and goals, probably Greg Taylor, because I don't think he fancies Bernabé. Although I would, if it was me personally, I would play Bernabé because I'm not really a big fan of what Greg Taylor's doing this season. Scales and Lagerbielke centre half, Rostinho at right back, McGregor, O'Reilly, Turnbull, Maeda, Kyogo and Yang up front, and I would say we'll win 4 or 5-0, as I've got St Johnstone tipped to go down, and I can't see them offering anything in the way of resistance to us.
You're on mute, Jared.
So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll just wrap up with our final thoughts for the pod. So I'll go with mine first. So Jerry over on Axom, he's doing a show I brought up on the screen. It's called Singin' I'm Not a Billy, She's a Tim. So it's an original show with an all-female cast of the old Singin' I'm Not a Billy, He's a Tim version of it. So there's a show going on the 1st of September and 2nd of September. The link for tickets, if anyone's interested, is in the show notes, so you can check that out if you're interested in going to that. Just thought I'd share that to support some other, Celtic, fan media and stuff like that. But Willie, you got a final thought?
My final thought is I want a decent performance this weekend, because last weekend was boring as fuck. So I want a decent one this week.
Stephen?
Yeah, I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham on the Disney Channel. The story of Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds taking over Wrexham down in Wales. Very good series if you've not had a chance to catch it. It's good to see how a club that was once a big club can end up down in the depths. And interesting, they're playing in the tier below the bottom league in the English league, and they're getting 10,000 fans for a home game, which kind of puts the SPFL into perspective. But yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I'd recommend it.
Thanks, Willie. Thanks, Stephen, for joining us. Hail, everyone, and we'll talk to you on our next pod on the Pot Noodle on Monday. See you then. Hail.